How did wooden houses survive winters cold enough to cripple modern buildings? Picture a North Atlantic valley in deep winter. The wind slices across the land like a blade. The soil is locked solid, frozen beyond digging. Temperatures fall far below zero and stay there for months. Now imagine placing your entire future inside a structure made of wood, earth, grass, and smoke. No concrete, no insulation foam, no central heating humming in the background. By every modern assumption, this should have been a death sentence. And yet it wasn't. Viking communities did not merely endure these conditions. They lived within them. They raised children who survived to adulthood. They sheltered animals through the darkest months. They forged iron, planned voyages, told stories by firelight, and imagined futures that extended beyond winter. That contradiction is the mystery at the heart of Viking survival. Because archaeology tells us something deeply uncomfortable. In the same brutal climates, many Viking homes were warmer, more stable, and more resilient than a surprising number of modern houses standing there today. The explanation is not toughness, not superstition, and not luck. It was engineering. Not engineering as machines or devices, but engineering as systems thinking knowledge shaped by centuries of failure, observation, and adaptation. A way of building that treated climate as a reality to be negotiated, not an enemy to be conquered. The insight that made everything work was deceptively simple. Winter was not something to defeat. It was a force to be understood, shaped, and managed. And once that lesson was learned, survival followed. The Viking longhouse was never conceived as a cabin. It was conceived as a vessel pulled ashore. For Scandinavian societies, the sea was not an edge of the world. It was a workplace, a highway, and a teacher. And the lessons learned on water followed them onto land. The longhouse stretched long and narrow, its walls gently curved, often compared to an overturned ship's hull resting in the earth. This form was not chosen for beauty or symbolism. It was chosen for survival. In the North Atlantic, wind does not merely blow. It accelerates, collides, and tears heat from structures through pressure differentials and turbulent suction. Flat walls invite impact. Sharp corners create weakness. The longhouse avoided both. Its curved sides guided wind around the structure instead of allowing it to strike head-on, reducing pressure loss and preventing cold air from being forced through joints and seams. The building did not resist the storm. It let the storm pass. Some longhouses stretched over 30 meters. A few grew beyond 70. Yet inside these vast interiors, there were no modern rooms, no sealed boxes, no isolated spaces. Everyone lived together beneath a single roof. Families, workers, elders, servants, and animals sharing one continuous volume of air. This was not coincidence. It was thermal logic. Human bodies radiate heat constantly. So do animals. Dozens of living beings in one enclosed space created a steady, reliable warmth that no individual fire could match. Density itself became part of the heating system. The longhouse behaved like a living organism. Heat circulated. Air mixed. Energy was shared. It was not a collection of rooms. It was one body, thinking as a whole. When most people picture a Viking home, they imagine a log cabin rising from a snowy forest. That image collapses the moment you step into places like Iceland or Greenland, where trees were scarce, slow-growing, and often imported at great cost. The Vikings did not wait for abundance. They adapted to scarcity. Wood was never wasted on thick walls. It became structure instead of bulk. Heavy posts of pine, birch, or oak formed a skeletal frame, strong enough to carry the weight of the roof and snow above it. Everything beyond that frame had a different purpose. Insulation. Before the walls rose, builders laid a careful perimeter of large, flat stones around the footprint of the house. This stone belt leveled the ground, stabilized the structure, and prevented moisture from creeping upward into the wooden posts where rot would begin. Then came the true material of survival: turf. Not loose soil, but dense blocks of earth bound tightly together by living grass roots, cut cleanly from the land like bricks. These blocks were stacked into walls that could reach 2 meters thick at the base, gradually tapering upward for balance and strength. What emerged was not simply a wall, it was a thermal mass. Inside each turf block were countless microscopic air pockets, trapped and motionless. Still, air, as physics tells us, is one of the most effective insulators available. Long before modern insulation was invented, the Vikings had already mastered its principle. They used the land itself to hold warmth in place, turning scarcity into advantage through design rather than excess. Turf was not a dead material. It was alive. As seasons passed, grass spread across the walls and roof. Roots tightened their grip, stitching earth, stone, and timber into a single mass. What began as a structure slowly transformed into part of the ground itself. From a distance, Viking homes no longer looked like buildings. They resembled low, rounded hills resting quietly in the valley. From above, they nearly vanished into the terrain. This disappearance was not camouflage. It was climate control. Earth has a property modern materials struggle to match. It moderates temperature naturally. It absorbs heat slowly, holds it patiently, and releases it just as slowly over time. When winter tightened its grip and outside air plunged far below zero, the interior of these homes did not mirror the cold. Temperatures stabilized near freezing, sometimes warmer, protected from violent swings by the mass of earth surrounding them. The house was not fighting winter. It was buffering it. Cold arrived slowly. Warmth left slowly. This quiet exchange of energy made survival possible without constant fire or brute force heating. The building itself became a thermal engine, operating on time rather than fuel. It is a principle modern architecture has only recently begun to rediscover. That comfort does not always come from generating more heat, but from slowing the loss of what already exists. Fire was essential, but fire alone was never enough. The Vikings approached heating the way living systems do, not the way machines do. They did not rely on a single source of energy. They stacked them. Inside many longhouses, nearly half the interior space was reserved for livestock, cows, sheep, goats, and sometimes horses, sharing the same roof as the people who depended on them. This arrangement was not a sign of poverty or desperation. It was physics. A single cow produces as much heat as a small heater, and it does so continuously, without fuel, without pause. Multiply that by a dozen animals, and the result is a steady, living source of warmth, day and night, through the longest winter. The layout of the house made this heat usable. Animal stalls were positioned slightly lower than the human living area. Warm air rises by nature. Heat generated by livestock drifted upward, blending with the warmth of the hearth and the constant heat radiating from human bodies. Nothing was wasted. Everything circulated. Animals remained alive through the cold months. People remained warm enough to survive. A closed loop powered by biology instead of machinery. To modern senses, the smell and closeness would seem unbearable. But to Viking senses, comfort was a luxury. Survival was the priority. Warmth that walked and breathed was better than no warmth at all. In a Viking house, light was not the priority. Survival was. Windows, by their nature, are weaknesses. Every opening in a wall becomes a path for heat to escape and cold to invade. In the Viking world, glass was rare, fragile, and valuable, reserved for churches and elite buildings, not for homes meant to endure winter. So most longhouses were nearly windowless. Illumination came from fire. Ventilation came from above. Small wall openings did exist, but when winter arrived, they were sealed carefully with moss, straw, wood, or cloth. Once closed, they stayed closed, for months at a time. Life unfolded in dim, smoky half-light. This was not ignorance of comfort. It was discipline. Darkness is uncomfortable. Cold is lethal. The entrance to the house was treated with the same seriousness. Doors were low, thick, and tightly fitted, forcing anyone who entered to stoop, reducing the volume of cold air that could rush inside. Many homes added a simple but effective solution, an unheated vestibule, a small buffer space that functioned like an airlock before the main living area. Snow stopped there. Wind lost its strength there. Even the direction of the doorway mattered. Entrances were positioned away from prevailing winds to prevent drafts from cutting through the interior. Every choice served a single purpose: reduce uncontrolled airflow, preserve heat, extend life through the long, dark season. The heart of the Viking Longhouse was not a fireplace built into a wall. It was something far more deliberate. A long, shallow hearth ran through the center of the house, sometimes stretching more than 10 meters from end to end. This placement was not symbolic. It was functional. Fire at the center meant heat radiated evenly outward, reaching every part of the living space instead of concentrating in one corner. Along the edges of the hearth, stones were carefully arranged. These stones absorbed heat while the fire burned and released it slowly long after the flames faded. They acted as thermal batteries. Fuel depended on the land. In forested regions, wood fed the fire. Where trees were scarce, peat replaced it. Peat was not inferior fuel. It burned slowly and evenly, producing steady heat rather than sudden bursts of flame. It was cut, dried, and stored with winter in mind, treated as a strategic resource rather than waste. The hearth did more than provide warmth. It cooked meals. It illuminated the darkness. It anchored daily life around a single source of energy. And it filled the house with smoke. Smoke that did not immediately escape. Smoke that lingered, layered, and accumulated beneath the roof. Which brings us to the strangest and most misunderstood part of Viking house design. Viking longhouses had no chimneys. What seems unthinkable today was once a calculated choice. As fires burned along the central hearth, smoke rose and collected beneath the roof, forming a warm, heavy layer above head height. This was not a flaw in the design. It was part of the system. That smoke served three critical purposes. First, it preserved the structure itself. Smoke killed insects, discouraged pests, and slowed the rot that threatened wood in damp northern climates. The house was constantly being treated simply by being lived in. Second, smoke trapped heat. Held beneath the turf roof, it created an insulating layer that reduced heat loss and stabilized interior temperatures through long nights. Third, smoke was released slowly and deliberately through adjustable roof vents known as liori. These openings were not fixed. They could be opened or closed using long poles from the hearth below, allowing the household to regulate airflow without sacrificing warmth. The balance was fragile. Open the vent too much, and precious heat escaped into the sky. Close it too tightly, and the air became thick and oppressive. The Vikings accepted smoky air as the price of survival. Comfort was negotiable. Staying alive was not. Clean air mattered less than warmth that endured. Modern instinct tells us to fight snow. We shovel it away, scrape it off, and expose walls to the cold air beyond. The Vikings did the opposite. They waited. As winter deepened, snow gathered naturally against turf walls and settled thickly across the roof. Instead of seeing danger, they saw protection. Snow filled cracks. It blocked wind. It sealed the house from the outside world. When compacted by time and repeated storms, a meter of snow became a powerful insulator, forming a thermal cocoon around the building. Inside that cocoon, wall temperatures stabilized near zero, even as blizzards raged outside at -30. Snow was not removed unless absolutely necessary. Digging it away meant exposing the house to wind and sudden heat loss. To the Vikings, snow was not an obstacle. It was insulation-free, abundant, and remarkably effective. As winter tightened its grip, the house slowly disappeared beneath white drifts. Its shape softened, its edges vanished, and beneath that frozen armor, the interior grew quieter, steadier, and warmer. The deeper the winter pressed down, the more the house was protected by it. So how did Viking houses survive Arctic winters that shattered weaker designs? Not because of fire alone, not because of brute strength, and not because of myth or legend. They survived because they were systems. Nothing existed in isolation. Earth became insulation, absorbing and releasing heat with patience. Animals became living heaters, breathing warmth into the space day and night. Smoke became preservation, protecting wood and trapping heat beneath the roof. Snow became armor, sealing cracks and silencing the wind. And human behavior discipline, restraint, and awareness regulated the entire balance. Every element supported the others. Remove one, and the system weakened. Keep them aligned, and winter lost its power. The Vikings did not build shelters meant to resist nature. They engineered environments designed to cooperate with it. Their greatest insight was simple but profound. Warmth is not created out of nothing. It is preserved, protected, and managed over time. That logic still challenges the way we build today. This is primal heritage, not nostalgia, not romantic legend, but hard-earned engineering wisdom knowledge, forged by survival, refined through generations, and tested against the coldest conditions on Earth. And it leaves us with a quiet, uncomfortable question. What systems did we abandon that once made survival possible? If this story changed the way you see the past, share your thoughts in the comments and join us at Primal Heritage as we continue uncovering the intelligence hidden inside ancient survival. Because the old world still has lessons to teach, if we are willing to listen.